What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we are going to continue our coverage over the X-Men, but now it's time for us to dive back over to some more Uncanny X-Men. Today we're going to cover issues number 291, 292, and 293. Now, this is a three-part story arc where we're kind of going to continue our coverage of the Gold Team. Because remember, in the early 1990s, X-Men got really popular. You had a lot of different X-Men teams. X-Factor, X-Force, Excalibur. But you had two X-Men teams. And so when it came to Charles Xavier, he realized he had 14 different X-Men members. He said, you know what? I'll make two teams, Gold Team and Blue Team. Now, if you were following Storm Team, it took place in Uncanny X-Men. But if you were following Cyclops Team, it took place over in just the X-Men book. Blue and gold. Storm is gold and Cyclops is blue team. Now, today's video, we're going to focus on a certain character known as Mikkel. And Mikkel is the older brother to Colossus. And he first appeared a while back in our coverage over Uncanny X-Men, but now it's time for us to, well, remove him from the book for a short period of time. And so getting into today's video, we're going to jump over to Uncanny X-Men issue number 291, where we actually pick up with Colossus opening the door to Callisto, who does seem to be severely injured. Now, guys, remember, Callisto used to be the leader of the Morlocks. Now, remember, the Morlocks were a group of mutants who lived in the tunnels of New York. And the reason why? Well, because of their mutation. You see, sometimes when mutants gain their abilities, it can also change their appearances. And so you had the Morlocks, who were mutants who had their body changed, hide in the tunnels of the New York City. Now, with that being said, Callisto was their leader for a very long time. Now, really, she lost that role to Storm a while back. But because Storm was not going to stay down there in the tunnels with the Morlocks, she asked Callisto to be their leader while she was gone. The problem was, well, Callisto lost that role to Mask, another character who took over the leadership role in earlier books that we had covered. Now, when it came to Mask, he also had the ability to change your appearance. And so with him, he wanted full control of the Morlocks. And so he changed Callisto into a beautiful woman so that she could no longer be the leader of the actual group, because now she was no longer disfigured. She looked normal and could actually go out in public. Now, with all that being said, we cannot forget that back in X-Force, Mask died. He was killed off by Cable in X-Force. And so with all that information, we learned the Morlocks had apparently attacked Callisto, and she was only barely able to make it over to the X-Mansion. But she did not come alone. She actually came with another character, and that would be Healer. Now, we have to jump over to the brother of Colossus. Now, the brother of Colossus, better known as Mikkel, has been only around for a very short period of time in X-Men comics. Now, for Mikkel, he was actually only founded by Colossus a while back because we had learned Mikkel was locked away in another dimension. And because of that, the world believed that he had died once him and his crew had went into that other dimension. But in reality, he was the sole survivor of his crew. Now, here's the big thing. When it comes to Mikkel, he has the ability to manipulate all kinds of energy. And the reason why I'm bringing that up right now, because once he had arrived in that other dimension by going through a portal, he went through a series of events where he was part of a huge civil war. But while in one big battle in that other dimension, the portal opened up and he had to use his powers to close the portal. The problem was when he did that, it sent out a huge feedback, killing every single person who was near him at that battle site when he had closed that portal. And so ever since Colossus and the X-Men had brought him back over to the main Marvel universe, Well, he has been having these headaches, and with those headaches, he began to see all these different dead bodies of people he had killed when he had closed that portal in the past. And so for him, it's kind of like his mind is slowly falling apart. And it only began once he was able to come back into the main Marvel universe. Now, this is going to be very important when it comes to the idea of him kind of being removed from comics. Now, for Charles Xavier, he does use his powers on the mind of Callisto to kind of get a better idea of what she actually went through. And we do learn that apparently after Mask was killed off, the Morlocks were unable to find another leader. And so it does seem like they were trying to maybe go back to Callisto to bring her back into the ranks. But for Callisto, when she had her body changed into a beautiful woman, she kind of loved the idea that she now had a life again away from the Morlocks. Either way, they were attacking her. Now, she was actually warned by Healer before the attack came. But either way, they arrived and she had no choice but to go ahead and battle against them. Now, she was able to win not very easily, but she was barely able to win and get the heck out of there. But she knew the only people who could possibly help her is the X-Men. Now, things get a tad bit crazier where you have Mikkel being able to jump into the connection going on between Charles Xavier's mind and also Callisto's mind. Because for Charles Xavier, only the X-Men were invited inside the second connection. But somehow Mikkel was able to jump in even though he was not invited. And so for the X-Men, they're very confused of how powerful Mikkel truly is. Because like I said, the man has the ability to manipulate all types of energy. Now with all that information, Mikkel is saying, listen, I think the X-Men are overreacting. Like yes, she was attacked by her old group, but I don't think the X-Men have to jump down the Morlocks tunnels and stop them because it seems like they just need a new leader. It seems like they're lost because they have no leader anymore. Now, you do have Storm begin to blame herself, and here's the reason why. Because let's not forget that in the past, Storm was the leader of the Morlocks once she was able to take down Callisto. But the problem was Storm was still an X-Men, and so she could not stay in the tunnels with the Morlocks. And so she left Callisto in charge while she was gone. But here's the problem. You see, for Storm, she believes if she had stayed down there with the Morlocks, none of this would have happened. But the problem is now she feels like it's all her fault. Now, for Archangel, he does blame Storm for what has happened. Because let's not forget, in the very first X-Men crossover, better known as the Mutant Massacre, you had a group of mutants known as the Marauders go into the tunnels of the Morlocks and begin to kill them off left and right. Now, while that was happening, you had the X-Men and X-Factor go into the tunnels to help out the Morlocks. But while doing that, Archangel unfortunately got seriously injured. Now, he was not injured by the Morlocks, he was injured by the Marauders. But because of that, he was so severely injured, he lost his wings, which then led to him meeting Apocalypse and becoming Archangel. And so for Warren, he's kind of like, no, this is your fault, Storm. If you were down there to be a good leader, maybe, just maybe, I would have been able to keep my wings. Now you have our heroes hear a scream, and they realize that scream came from Callisto in the med labs. And so when they go over to her, they see that Healer had used the last amount of his power, the last amount of his life force to change Callisto back into the form she was before Mask had turned her into a beautiful woman. So technically Callisto does look like her old self again and could most likely take up the role of the leader of the Morlocks if she wanted to. Now, for the X-Men, they do go over to the Morlock tunnels to kind of see what's happening down there. Now, when they do arrive at the tunnels of the Morlocks, they find a bunch of dead bodies of the Morlocks. Now, the dead bodies right here are not technically real. It does seem to be some kind of psychic image left behind to tell people, do not disturb. Do not try to come deeper into the tunnels of the Morlocks. But for the X-Men, they don't have a choice here. They have to go deeper into the tunnels. Except when they do, well, they find the Morlocks actually fighting against themselves. It seems like the Morlocks are, well, killing themselves while fighting against one another. Now, Iceman did not come along with his team. Matter of fact, he stayed behind with Callisto over at the X Mansion. They're not going to allow her to go back to the tunnels of the Morlocks, but she wants to be free. She wants to go, but Iceman says no. But then you have Iceman be confronted by Mikkel, who kind of agrees that Callisto should be let go to go back to the Morlock tunnels. And this begins the process of us seeing Mikkel being removed from X-Men comics for a short period of time, but also kind of hinting at the idea that Iceman is truly a powerful mutant. Now, I want to jump back over to the X-Men who are in the tunnels of the Morlocks. Here's the reason why. Because you have Charles being able to kind of realize that all the Morlocks seem to be linked together mentally. Like all their minds have been connected for some unknown reason by an unknown source. Now, this could have been done by Mask, but the problem is Mask does not really have the ability to mess with people's minds like that. He's able to change your face, which could then do some mental damage to you because the way you look now, but he does not have the ability to connect people's minds. Now for Storm, she kind of hates what she's seeing going on with the Morlocks. The whole idea that she should have been down here to help them out a long time ago. But you did have all the Morlocks recognize her as their leader, the one that kind of had stepped away, had abandoned them. And so you had all the Morlocks begin to surround her. Now, we cannot forget that Storm is claustrophobic. And so with all these different Morlocks just surrounding her in a very tight space, she begins to freak out to the point where she used all her powers to break open a hole that leads back to the surface of New York. But now Storm is kind of out of the game at the moment. Until she's able to come back down, it's now up to the rest of the X-Men who came over here to the Morlock tunnels. Archangel, Bishop, Iceman, and also Jean Grey as well. Now, as we dive into Uncanny X-Men issue number 292, we pick up with Storm still kind of freaking out, but you have Colossus, Jean Grey, and also Bishop in the last three X-Men to kind of hold off the Morlocks, because thanks to Storm kind of opening a hole that leads up into the surface of New York, you now have the Morlocks just going on a rampage across New York. Not all of New York, but the area they're in currently. And you have all of these innocent people now being affected. Now, Archangel actually left mid-battle, and we're going to see why later on in this chapter and the next one. But for right now, it's up to Colossus, Bishop, and also Jean Grey to hold down the Morlocks until Storm is able to rejoin them, but also find out why all their minds are being affected. Now, for Bishop, he wants to go ahead and start killing them off. He's all like, hey, you know what? It's time for me to start shooting people. But you have Colossus say, no, we as the X-Men do not harm the Morlocks like this. Now, for me personally, Colossus is crazy because Colossus had killed people in the past up to this point in X-Men comics. But hey, he's all like, we are not going to be killers. We're going to find a better way to actually help out the Morlocks. Now, I want to jump back over to the X-Mansion because let's not forget, to Mikkel, Callisto has the right to go ahead and leave the mansion and go back to the Morlocks. Now, the only person who can stop Mikkel right now is Iceman. But let's not forget that for Mikkel, he has the ability to manipulate energy. And so he begins to turn Iceman into water. You heard that right. Into water. And so it kind of shows that Iceman is not really up to par to battle against Mikkel. But then we jump over to Archangel. Now, for Archangel, the reason why he left the battle, because let's not forget, he lost his wings here in the Morlock tunnels back in the Mutant Massacre. And so for Archangel, he goes to the same exact spot where he had lost his wings. And for him, that was the moment where Angel had died, but the birth of Archangel. And for him, he hates the idea of what he has become. Now, for Charles Xavier, he was able to figure out who is responsible for all the Morlocks for going crazy. It would be a mutant better known as Brain Cell. Now, Brain Cell has the ability to connect his mind to other minds nearby him, like the Morlocks. But he's also able to kind of feed them what he feels at the moment. So for example, with him being scared, with him having fear about the future of the Morlocks, you have the other Morlocks kind of being able to feel what he is currently feeling. And so you have the Morlocks kind of going on a riot because of him. And so for Charles, he realized what he has to do if he wants the Morlocks to stop rioting. And really, when we jump back over to the X-Men, we kind of see how bad it has gotten out there in New York. The rioting has gotten a whole lot worse. And you have the X-Men still trying their best to kind of hold back, but you didn't have Jean Grey realize that there is a possibility that they may not be able to just hold back. And let me explain why. Because the Morlocks, they have a range of different kinds of abilities. And with those different kinds of abilities, they are able to do a lot of damage to the city, but also to the people of New York. And so with that being said, you have Jean Grey realize that some mutants in the Morlocks cannot be saved. That most likely, to save the lives of innocent people, they might have to start killing people or at least shutting down their minds. Now, getting back over to the X-Mansion, the battle between Iceman and also Mikkel continues on. Now, here's the big catch. You see, Mikkel is trying to teach Iceman a lesson because, again, Mikkel has the ability to manipulate energy. And so he was able to realize that there's more to Iceman than we actually know, kind of hinting at the idea that Iceman could be a real powerful mutant if he's actually able to tap into his powers, if he is able to actually learn more about his abilities. If Iceman was more focused about learning his powers rather than being with the ladies or possibly doing other things in his life, he would be a very powerful mutant that other mutants might be scared of. Either way, you do have Mikkel being able to take down Iceman, and you have Callisto being able to find the old jacket that she gave to Storm when Storm was able to take over the leadership role of the Morlocks. Now, I want to jump back over to Charles Xavier because you have Charles Xavier realize that Brain Cell is currently in a very tight spot in the Morlock tunnels. And so for Charles, he wants to help out Brain Cell, but he'll have to crawl over there to him because his wheelchair is too big to go down that certain tunnel that Brain Cell is actually in. Now, while you have Charles trying to crawl over to Brain Cell, well, you have Charles feel like something has snagged onto his pants, except no, his leg got severely injured because something had stabbed him while he was trying to crawl over to Brain Cell. But either way, for Charles, he does know how to help out Brain Cell because Brain Cell kind of learns different things about the world around him by physical touch, by touching other people and learning through them. And so for Charles, it's kind of like, hey, you know what? Let me crawl over there to him to actually help him out. Now, for the X-Men, they kind of feel relaxed because you didn't have the Morlocks begin to go back into their tunnels. But for the X-Men, they're kind of still worried about the idea the Morlocks might do something else down the road or something very soon because they still have no leaders. They're still kind of like wild people living in the tunnels of New York. And so you have the X-Men go into the actual Morlock tunnels to kind of figure out what to do with the Morlocks. Now, at the end of this book, you didn't have Mikhail and Callisto standing over the body of Iceman. He's not dead, no, but Mikhail was able to defeat Iceman. But now these two characters have free access to go back over to the tunnels of the Morlocks. And so now we have to jump into Uncanny X-Men issue number 293, where we do pick up with Storm, Bishop, and Colossus being able to go into the deeper parts of the Morlock tunnels. Now, when they do arrive in the deeper parts of the tunnels, they find Mikhail, and Mikhail is surrounded by all the Morlocks. And for our heroes, they're kind of wondering, why in the world is Mikhail here? And why is the Morlock surrounding him like he is their leader, like he is their king? Now, if you're wondering, hey, where's Jean Grey? Where's Charles Xavier? Well, Charles told Jean Grey to find Archangel so that she can help him through his certain situation at the moment, while you have Charles trying to work his way back over to his wheelchair to hopefully rejoin the X-Men. Unfortunately for Charles Xavier, he won't be able to make it back over to the X-Men just yet. And the reason why, because, well, you have Callisto being able to get the jump on him. And so now we're going to see a battle between Callisto and also Charles Xavier. Now, I want to jump back over to the X-Men. Here's the reason why. Because you have Colossus trying to reason with his brother. Because now you have his brother actually talking about, well, taking his own life, but also wanting to see if Colossus is going to join him and the rest of the Morlocks as they take their lives. Because for Mikhail, he believes that his only purpose is to take lives, that his power's only purpose, again, is to take lives. Because when they were back in that other dimension, him and his powers, they only killed people. And so for Mikhail, he's saying, this is what I'm good for. To, kill people, including myself. And so he opens up the gates that allows the East River water to come into the actual tunnels of the Morlocks to, well, flood the tunnels, to kill every single person who is currently living in the tunnels. Now, I want to jump over to what I say is the funniest moment of this story arc. Charles Xavier being able to knock out Callisto because, well, I guess she did not see it coming, even though she was clearly staring at the man. But while you have the two characters go back and forth for a very short period of time, you did have Charles being able to uppercut Callisto right in the face to knock her out. Now, for Charles, he believes, okay, he should be able to work his way over to the rest of the X-Men. But you didn't have Mikhail use his powers to kind of force Charles and also Callisto right over to where he is at, to kind of be part of the whole idea of him killing of himself, but also the Morlocks. Now, we also see Iceman arrive, and we're kind of left to believe that we're going to have this big final battle between the X-Men and also Mikhail. Now, I want to jump back over to Archangel and also Jean Grey because you have Archangel going through it. Now, he does have a good reason why, because let's not forget, he lost his wings while being here in the tunnels the last time he was here. Then he met Apocalypse, who turned him into Archangel. But for Archangel, he kind of believes that it is Apocalypse's fault that he now has this bloodlust. It is Apocalypse's fault that he has changed into a different kind of man, a dangerous man. And you have Jean Grey kind of say, so what? Like, even though Apocalypse had given you those tools to be that kind of person, you are still responsible for your own actions. Like, yes, he may turn you into a bloodlust character or some kind of crazy being, but it's up to you to take those tools and become the man you want to be. It's her saying, like, dude, you're overreacting. Like, yes, he changed you, but you can still have a normal life, but you have to regain control of your life. Now, getting back over to Mikhail and the X-Men, you have Mikhail kind of tell us that he feels like people like him, people like the Morlocks, people like Callisto, do not have the right to live on this world anymore. And so for Mikkel, it's time for them to, well, go away. Now you have Colossus trying his best to talk his brother out of the idea of killing him and the others, because let's not forget that Mikkel has not met his little sister yet, Ileana, of course better known as Magic. And so for Colossus, he's trying to reason with his brother. But the rest of the X-Men, they kind of realize Mikkel cannot be reasoned with. And really, Mikkel does not want to kill off Colossus nor the X-Men, because to Mikkel, they still have some time to live. They need to survive to do what their lives are destined to do. He's kind of like, no, you still have so much time on this planet. But for me, no, I'm out of it. And so you have Mikkel begin the process of bringing down the entire tunnels of the Morlocks, where you have Mikkel being able to put the X-Men in some kind of energy bubble to get them the heck out of the tunnels, and the tunnels collapse. And we're kind of left to believe that the Morlocks are dead, but also Mikkel. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, no, they're not dead. This leads into another series coming out down the road on my channel where Storm gets a 4-part miniseries. With that 4-part miniseries, Mikkel comes back, and I want to say the Morlocks do as well. But the book kind of ends on a very sad note, because you do have Colossus call up his sister. And she had no idea what was the big surprise that he had for her, because him and Mikkel was supposed to go back to Russia to have Mikkel meet his little sister, the sibling he was never able to meet. But now you have Colossus calling his sister to tell her, hey, that surprise ain't coming. And so she's left to wonder, what was the prize in the first place? Now, if you saw our last video, you know that Storm lost Forge. Forge left the X-Men, he broke up with Storm and left with Mystique. And so we pick up with Storm kind of sad, because the plants that she brought with her from Kenya have all officially died. Now, I got a problem with this. I got a lot of problems with this, because you see, the X-Men had gone through a lot ever since Storm had joined the X-Men. Let's not forget, there was a point in time where the world believed the X-Men were dead. The school got blown up. The X-Men were actually stationed in Australia, of all places. Like, you were away from your plants for a very long time. How in the world did these plants stay alive even after the entire mansion was blown up? Either way, because she lost Forge and now her plants, she kind of feels like she's left alone with no kind of support. And you have Bishop being that guy in her corner, supporting her, trying to comfort her. And so we are continuing this idea of Storm and Bishop possibly getting together. But this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please, leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.